And now I'm excited to introduce to you our last speaker, Efe Acunaz. Efe is the head of communications at ePages, one of the most popular solutions for selling online. He studied global and international affairs in New York and completed his master's degree in European studies. He's worked in several countries in the field of marketing, PR. And since 2018, he's been working at ePages and focuses on making powerful commerce easy for small and medium-sized businesses and enabling brick-and-mortar retailers to transform their businesses to the digital future. Efe will be talking about the Greta effect in retail, how to reach a new generation of conscious shoppers. Give it up for Efe Acunaz.
Hi everyone, my name is Efe Acunaz, and today I'm going to be talking about the Greta effect in retail. I work for a company called ePages. We are the leading e-commerce platform in Europe and serving over 100,000 SMBs. So today, as part of this presentation, I will share with you insights from consumers as well as merchants, and also best practices from the industry in order to give you a perspective as to how merchants can reach a new generation of conscious shoppers. Let's take a look at what we mean by the Greta effect first. So this is a term that we coined to refer to a changing consumer behavior. But before we start talking about that, I want to take a step back and ask you what you think of when you think of the Greta effect. So what was we've all seen it in the news. We've all seen that our beaches are getting polluted, our oceans are getting polluted, and all these visuals we see on the news, and also the melting ice caps in the North Pole, and a fire in a production facility in Bangladesh that left many of employees dead, unfortunately. Our actions have consequences in this world, and our consumption is no exception. There's a small but growing group of consumers that pay attention to what they're consuming, where they're buying the products from, and what the consequences are with their consumption. So they purposefully research about products, brands, and inform themselves and find out best practices as to how they can minimize their impact in this world. The Fridays for Future movement has done a great deal in raising awareness among consumers, and we see a shift in consumer behavior, which has also consequences for merchants. So throughout this presentation, we will talk about ways in which merchants can reach this small but growing group of consumers and what they have to pay attention to. As you all know, the topic of sustainability is very, very complex and sophisticated. We won't have time to go into a lot of details in terms of what all sustainable practices are for merchants. However, we're going to focus on three aspects in which merchants can find out how to reach consumers. So first of all, we recommend merchants to think and act sustainable. That means they have to enjoy competitive advantages that the bigger players might not have because of existing processes. So they have to take a look at what they do and what processes they can change and how they can make their business sustainable. Secondly, we recommend merchants to be transparent. So when we look at the industry, you see that we are all visible 24/7. There's no longer anything that we can hide from the consumers. They're constantly searching for products, they're informing themselves, and they want to know, they want to get to the bottom of what's behind what they're consuming. So it's very important for merchants to find out ways in which they can create that transparency for consumers. Last but not least, we will talk about best practices and examples as to how merchants are providing that ease of access to consumers, how they can make it very easy for them to find information about their offer, about how they differ from the rest of the products in the market, and what innovations there are in the market. So let's start with some insights from consumers. I want you to think about the last time that you ordered something from your favorite online shop. Probably you received the package within a day or maybe a couple of days if it's a smaller shop. And then when you receive the package, you notice maybe that the package contains a lot of plastic wrapping material. Maybe you ask yourself, does that have to be this way? Or you probably thought to yourself whether you want to take a star off from the product review so that other people can be also aware of the practice. As we said, we live in a global village, so you want to inform others about the experience. And some consumers go even as far as looking for an alternative so that they don't have to support that practice. When we look at the market, we are noticing that consumers are increasingly voting with their feet. That means they're wishing, there's an interesting statistics that 71% of consumers, online shoppers in this case, wish retailers offered better environmental practices such as less packaging or reduced carbon footprint. With the increasing consumption during the corona crisis, we're also seeing a boom in online retail. More and more consumers are shopping online, and meanwhile, they're asking themselves what the impact of their shopping is. There's an increasing amount of consumers that actually start searching how their online shopping is impacting the environment. So much so that shopping search terms around impact of online shopping on the environment has gone up in comparison to 2019 to 2020. They've gone up by 2,250%. Meanwhile, we also see, with other keywords, we also see a considerable increase. Consumers are also increasingly concerned about the impact of their shopping on ethical practices. So what kind of practices are being implemented with the working conditions of employees or what a company is doing in local communities. So that's making a huge impact in the conception of in the practice of online shopping. So consumers expect brands to take a stand on social issues, so much so that 77% of them said that they think this is an important factor. Meanwhile, in the absence of a legal framework that defines what sustainability is in retail and what eco-friendly actually means, many companies involve in a so-called greenwashing in their marketing, so in which they deceive the consumer to believe that the product line is actually sustainable, whereas in practice, these corporations especially are involving themselves in shady practices and that are harmful for the environment, for consumers, and also for workers alike. Zara, as you know, is a pioneer in fast fashion. New products come so fast that the consumer gets a different shopping experience every time they go on the online shop or every time they shop for products in the store. It is by definition not possible for a fast fashion brand like Zara to be sustainable or eco-friendly. In this picture, you see a campaign started by Zara a couple of years ago, whereby they committed themselves for sustainable practices, and they started a sustainable collection. The problem with that, although it sounds great and gives the consumer a feeling of doing something good with their purchase, in practice, this is far from it because the whole core of the business is not sustainable. This is also comparable to McDonald's, for example, whereby McDonald's, there's not enough biologically raised cattle in the world to supply the demand of McDonald's. So, moving on to the other side in retail, there are some companies that actually walk the talk. So they're actually doing something with sustainability, not just communicating about it, but actually doing something. An example I want to give you is picture clothing brand. So they each year during Black Friday, they have a social media campaign where they discourage the customers from shopping online because they communicate that Black Friday has a huge social and environmental cost. Other brands like Jack Wolfskin, for example, they take pride in the fact that their products are of high quality and their products are long-lasting. So they actually encourage the customers to use their repair service and not replace products. The same brand also makes it very easy for the consumer to find out about what they're purchasing, what's behind the supply chain, what kind of companies and subcontractors and providers are involved for single elements of a jacket, for example. In this example, you see a wheel where you can move with your mouse cursor on the website, and you can find out what the local suppliers in the supply chain are doing in terms of abiding by certain sustainability and environmental standards. So they make it very easy for the customer to understand what's behind the product they're buying. So this is usually not very easy for the customer to find out. There's also innovative apps that appear in the market that make it easy for consumers to rely on the recommendation of one another. So the app called CodeCheck has been in the market for some years now. It's a startup that went out in the market with the idea that they want to create more transparencies in the market. So with the app, you can go to a physical store, scan a product using the EAN code, or if you're shopping online, you can enter the term in the search box, and then you will find out the reviews of others, and you can find out in an easy user-guided interface, you can find out if a product is environmentally friendly, such as does it contain palm oil, for example, or if it's good for your health, if it has some health hazards in the production or in the ingredients. So they make it very easy to understand. This is also a good opportunity for SMBs to create transparencies, especially in the segment of cosmetics. It can be quite costly to acquire environmentally friendly labels. They can rely instead of that, they can rely on the transparency through the community through such innovative apps. Moving forward, I also want to give the example of Chibo as a brand. As some of you might know, there's a new trend in Europe and Germany, at least, that is becoming more and more prevalent, called live shopping, whereby with experts, brands are communicating about the products, what's behind the product, and what kind of processes are involved in the supply chain. Chibo is using this platform to communicate with their audience and talk about where, for example, a coffee produced in Rwanda, what kind of impact does it have on the local communities, and what kind of impact does it have on eco-friendliness. So they make it transparent as such. Greta has said in a conference, in a climate conference in Poland, that you're never too small to make a difference. We agree with Greta Thunberg that even small businesses have a great chance to address customers and adapt their marketing and business processes so that they can cater to this group of consumers. There's an opportunity, especially for small businesses, and today I want to show you some examples from rather small startups and businesses that successfully cater to this group of consumers. The first shop I want to mention is an online shop, pure online player, that sells kiteboards and long skateboards. So it's a shop, the owner is located in Frankfurt, and what defines this online shop is that every single product is eco-friendly and sustainable, and also provides at the same time high performance for skaters as well as surfers alike. So the name stands for MIO, stands for main ingredient organic. Let's take a moment and listen to the owner Christian Meissner talk about his business.
Hi, ich bin Christian von Mioboards. Ich baue ökologische Kitesurfboards aus Holz. Wir benutzen kein EPS, PU oder sonstige giftige Werkstoffe. Wir versuchen alles möglichst ökologisch herzustellen und lieben das Kitesurfen. Mein Sohn wollte gern ein Longboard zum Skaten haben und da habe ich aber gesagt, gut, Longboard, okay, aber wenn wir eins machen oder kaufen, dann bauen wir das lieber selbst. Wir haben uns hingestellt und angefangen, ein Board zu bauen, zu shapen, zu sägen und zu machen und es wurde einfach immer besser. Und lustigerweise hatten wir innerhalb kürzester Zeit so gute Shapes, die sich dann auch noch verkauft haben. Das heißt, meine Kinder, die waren damals 12 und 14, haben damit ihr Taschengeld verdient. Wir stehen ja in Konkurrenz mit der Industrie. Die Industrie baut Bretter aus billigen Materialien mit viel Harz und viel Glasgewebe, um ein stabiles Produkt herzustellen. Wir haben das einfach mal rumgedreht. Wir haben gesagt, wir nehmen ein stabiles Material und verpacken es mit möglichst wenig Epoxidharz und haben dadurch ein Produkt geschaffen, was dennoch sehr leicht ist, sehr stabil, sogar stabiler als die Industrie und dazu noch ökologisch ist.
So, let's take a look at what customers of Mioboards really value about this business. Conscious shoppers really enjoy the direct contact with an expert. So this is a finding that after having some interviews, we've found out that many of the customers from Mioboards really appreciate the direct contact with him through Instagram, through email or phone calls, so that they can get their questions answered quickly. This is something that they can't find in other bigger brands, and that's something that they really appreciate, because it can be quite difficult. We've talked about greenwashing, we've talked about other companies doing marketing but not delivering results. So they really have a lot of questions, and the direct contact is very helpful. Secondly, most important inquiries are on the supply chain. There are Facebook communities about surfing or forums about this topic, for example, where Christian and his company is showing expertise and answering questions from customers and giving more transparencies. Lastly, we've also identified that ease of access to information is also an important factor in terms of creating loyal customers. So if the customers have enjoyed this direct contact with the merchant and they got their questions answered, they will be most probably coming back. Furthermore, we've also identified that conscious shoppers care about the environment and sustainability, but this is not the only phenomenon that they care about. For them, it's also important that the products they buy deliver a certain quality standard and also performance. So this is something very important for them. In that sense, to give that trust and transparency to the customer, it's important to involve in partnership networks. So what Mioboards does is that they work with a company that enables customers to rent the product for a few days and then just try it out, and then they can make sure that it delivers a good quality product. Furthermore, the sustainable network of a couple of projects also makes it transparent and increases trust for the customer, so that they're getting a high quality product. For example, Mioboards has a gold level certificate at a project called EcoBoard, and they ensure not only sustainability standards, but also performance and high quality. The second shop I want to mention is from physical retail. As many of you know, throughout the Corona crisis, it's been a difficult time for physical retailers because they are losing foot traffic. For most of them that have not digitized their business, it means that they completely lose business and lose the only sales channel they have. What Weltladen does is they specialize in fair trade products that are also providing good working conditions for the companies and the distributors in the global south. So they're eco-friendly and they sell sustainable products. The Weltladen stands for World Store when we translate it to English, and they have around 900 stores across Germany, and in Berlin they also have 10 stores where I'm holding this presentation. Let's take a look at some insights from Weltladen. When we look at the brand and the business, we see that sustainability is in the DNA of the entire organization. So not just in the marketing, not just in one collection, as we've seen in the example of Zara. Every single product is sustainable, eco-friendly, and provides for ethical conditions for the workers. Fair and ecological trade is at the core for Weltladen. Secondly, customers of Weltladen really appreciate the fact that they have access to expert advice, and also they're willing to pay more to get sustainable products. They're very well informed themselves, but they also appreciate that they have expert advice. Many of the Weltladen employees themselves are actually sustainability activists, and they work on a voluntary basis in the stores. So they position themselves as experts and also transfer this knowledge for the local communities by holding seminars and positioning themselves. So, will your business be part of the change is the last slide I want to mention. When it comes to the topic of sustainability and the Greta effect, we've talked about the changing consumer behavior. But we've also identified that this is not something that you can do half-heartedly. You really have to put in all your efforts in order to build your brand from the ground up in terms of sustainable practices and sustainable principles. So that means there are a couple of points to consider. Let's take the Tesla example. Tesla wouldn't have had the success that it has today if it decided to provide a hybrid solution for the market, but they were bold enough to go full electric. For this is also what unifies many startups. They're bold enough to change their entire business around the topic of sustainability, which is why we recommend shape your business around sustainability. Secondly, we recommend businesses to enable digital touchpoints. We've talked about customers that are abandoning conventional ways and looking for alternative products. So be there where customers are looking for inspiration and information. Last but not least, do good things and talk about it. You've adapted your business in terms of sustainability, and you're building a sustainable business, you're operating sustainably, but make sure that you also talk about it. It's important to adapt your marketing messaging so that your customers and potential customers can know how you're helping making this world a better place. With that being said, I want to end my slides and end my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and let's get connected via LinkedIn and exchange on these topics. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much, Efe. That was a really insightful presentation. So, do you believe that conscious shopping is just a trend, or do you see it being a real change in consumer behavior?
That's a good question. I don't think that conscious shopping is just a trend. Rather, I think it's an irreversible change in consumer behavior that will last for in the future as well. When you look at consumers informing themselves and leaving conventional practices, this speaks for a huge consumer behavioral change. So on the consumer side, you will see more awareness as the impact of globalization becomes more visible. I think as long as the problem around global warming, the mistreatment of animals and workers across the globe, and our negative impact on the environment continues that way, this will be an important phenomenon that will be there to stay. So on the consumer side, we're seeing more and more awareness as people become aware and as the impact of global warming is visible. They're also starting to question if their consumption is resulting in negative practices. So that's definitely an important factor. On the other hand, on the production side, we'll see with innovative technologies, the price of sustainable products going lower so that it would be available for the larger market to also consume sustainable and eco-friendly products. So I think this trend will follow us for the years to come.
Okay, so we're talking about real change here. Thank you so much. And I feel like there really is a growing consciousness around consumers, shopping habits and behaviors. Now, taking that to the next question, do you have any figures that show whether, the introduction of ecological and sustainable solutions affect really an increase in revenue? Do they impact the bottom line, or is it just too early to make such claims?
As many of you know, in the world of e-commerce, price is the main driver for purchase decisions. So that is followed by convenience and availability. And then you have a small but growing group of consumers that around 15 to 17% that actually want to know about more, that they want to inform themselves about the impact of their consumption in terms of how it impacts people, communities, environment, and social conscience. So this is going to be increasing. And in terms of the figures, I think there's proof of concept in the market with brands that shape their marketing around the idea of communicating the concrete impact of consumption of a product. Let's take Oatly for an example. Oatly has on the product packaging the CO2 impact, so you can they create transparency so that you can immediately find out that the product you're consuming is not harming the environment by causing emissions. So I think proof of concept is that Oatly has just announced their sales for last year, and they have a sales revenue. They have a revenue of 400 million euros. So this is especially for the food and beverage industry the case. There are many startups like Oatly, many businesses that provide a sustainable alternative, and this is only going to increase for the years to come.
Okay, very, very interesting. And I think also very impressive, the word transparency, what kind of role that plays. Yeah. Moving forward, are there any studies out there that confirm that consumers actually pay attention to whether the store offers such solutions or not? Or could it be that the opinions expressed by consumers on social media do not hold true when it comes to the sphere of purchasing?
That's a fantastic question, because there can definitely be discrepancies between what the consumers say and what they end up doing in practice. But we've also considered a lot of studies that, interesting that you ask, because recently I've read the study by Statista on consumer, I think it was titled Consumer Study 2021, so which looks at different markets. For the German market, for example, they've identified that 1 in 4 consumers already stopped buying a product because it doesn't provide a certain sustainability principle. So that means they're abandoned, especially in the food and beverage field, sector, and also cosmetics. I think it is around 30% of the consumers that actually consider sustainability as an important factor in food and beverage field, and also 27% in the segment of cosmetics and beauty, and 25% in fast fashion, and in the fast fashion industry in general. So when you look at those segments, and when you look at the younger group, around the age group 19 to 29 even go as far as boycotting entire brands and stores. That's around 26%, for example. So that's a considerable number.
Definitely, it's very considerable. Nonetheless, why are some consumers still so resistant to change? And on the other hand, why are changes in consciousness happening so slow?
Yeah, I think the fundamental reason why consumers want to change or see a reason why they should change their purchase behavior is that they have to understand why they should change it in the first place. They should see the reason. And when we look at the market, many consumers don't see the background or the supply chain or what kind of processes are involved in the production of the goods that they're purchasing. Did you know, for example, that there are 100,000 harmful chemicals in the production of agricultural goods, products, and also in the fashion industry? So it's interesting because many of us don't see that on the product labels or branding, but actually these substances can be even detected in breast milk or the spine cord, for example. So it's very harmful for the employees, for us as consumers, and the environment.
Okay, so we've talked about industrial changes, we've talked about consumer changes, now on to the legislation. Does legislation go hand in hand with an increase in environmental awareness? And if this is the case, why are only a few producers and or retailers ahead of the game?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think the short answer is no, it doesn't go hand in hand. Our legal right to information is still quite limited, and there's a lobby that wants to keep it this way. And for many consumers, for the average consumer, they don't know what they're actually consuming, and they don't really know what kind of social, environmental impact it has had on the environment. But this also, through the movements such as Fridays for Future or German Zero in the German context that push for more awareness and sustainability, we are seeing this growing market opportunity for businesses to tap into that, because there's this need to provide ease of access to information, inform the customers about what's really going on in the background. So in the absence of this comprehensive legal framework, many companies can take matters into their own hand and take advantage of this market opportunity and reach conscious shoppers, which is why we recommend businesses to take a look into this opportunity.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all of that insight, Efe, and thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.